Troy Aikman, the Hall of Famer. He was on the call last night, Bucs Saints, and he'll be at Lambeau next Sunday, the NFC Conference Championship game between the Buccaneers Packers at 3 Eastern on Fox. Troy, thanks for joining us. What advice would you give Drew Brees today if he asked for it?
Take some time away and just give it some real thought. I mean, I know he's been thinking about this for a long time. He's been doing it a long time, of course. But I think he just needs to get away and let some time pass. It's hard to make these kinds of decisions after a tough loss like what he just experienced.
But you went through this even when you retired, and then you flirted with coming back. Like, what is that urge that you got with those 2 or 3 different times where you thought about it?
Yeah, well, the first one was San Diego with the Chargers. It was as soon as I got released by the Cowboys, I had considered going to the Chargers, and then they ended up signing Doug Flutie, and that was actually Drew Brees' rookie year. They drafted Drew that year. We would have been teammates had I have gone. But it was a couple years later when I heard from Andy Reid and the Philadelphia Eagles, and then a year after that, my third year out, when Dave Wanstead and Norv Turner were with the Dolphins and asked if I would consider coming out. And I think what it is, Dan, is for me, I was actually 34 when I retired. So to still feel like you can do it and have your health and then miss the competition of it, now I'm fully satisfied in my job of broadcasting. But early on, it was hard walking out of a stadium and not knowing whether you had won or lost. But I think for Drew, because of his age, he's 42 years old, that the days are kind of, not totally. He could still play another year, of course, but he's not going to have the window of opportunity. I just didn't want to look back and just think, man, I wish I'd given it another shot. In hindsight, I'm glad I didn't do it. But at the time, it was a real urge, and I was going to do it for the Dolphins. At the end of the day, Rick Spielman was the general manager, and he's the one who ultimately just couldn't pull the trigger on it. They thought they were a quarterback away from going to the Super Bowl. But as it turned out, they really were not that good. I think the team went 6-10 that season. And so as I watched the Dolphins play that year, I thought, wow, I'm really glad. I don't think I wouldn't have made a big difference to that team.
But I wonder about Drew Brees. You walk off the field. You don't want to walk off this way. At home,
No way.
3 interceptions. But when you win, Troy, there's part of you that says, I want to do it again. Like, why? Yeah. Like Elway, limped away. He didn't walk away. He limped away after winning. Peyton knew he couldn't play anymore. Like, it feels like that's the only way you can walk away from winning is if you're barely able to walk away.
I agree with you, and that's a great point. If you had asked me early in the season, midway or so, if I thought Tom Brady was going to come back, even though he gave the Bucs a 2-year commitment, I would have said it's 50-50, as much as Tom has said he's going to play for X number of years. Now, he's having the most fun he's had, and they're winning. That there's no way he's not going to come back next year. So, and I agree with you as far as it goes for Drew. That, I mean, it's been an amazing career. Of course, the all-time leading passer, but that was one of his worst games of his career. It was the worst game of the season, and to have that be your final performance and go out, short of winning the Super Bowl, you're going to go out not having won, but. That's going to gnaw at him. He's a great competitor and a real disappointment. I don't think ultimately that's going to be decisive in whether or not he decides to come back.
How dangerous is Brady?
Well, he's real dangerous. I just think that I commented on it early in the game that I thought those 2 quarterbacks for young quarterbacks to watch and kind of emulate as far as how they play the game. I think Tom, having had a number of conversations with him about the position, there's a reason why he's won as many games as he has. And yes, he's had good players around him. He's had good coaching around him, all those things. But Tom understands all the little details of the game and what it takes to play winning football. And he did that in the biggest game of the year for him yesterday.
Would you rather have a quarterback mentally tough or physically?
Mentally. Yeah, I think that all the quarterbacks in our game are physically tough. I think to get to even the NFL, you have to have some amount of toughness. Some are able to play through things more than others, but I think more today than even when I played. And I thought that when I played, things were kind of hard. But with social media and all of the critics out there, I think mentally you've got to be really, really strong to play this game.
Well, I look at Lamar Jackson. At this same age, Aaron Rodgers had thrown 1 touchdown and 1 interception at age 24. Now we're questioning if Lamar Jackson can win a big game.
Yeah.
Are we being fair, given the talent he has and the resume, the brief resume, winning an MVP, that he should be winning these games?
No, I don't think it's fair. I mean, you think back, I think Peyton Manning lost his first 3 playoff games, and some people were questioning that. Now you laugh at that when you think about it, that Peyton Manning was ever questioned for anything. And, we're quick now, even when guys come into the league as rookies, we within a couple of games, I hear people start to comment on whether or not a guy's a bust or not. I mean, there's a number of us, me certainly being one of them, that had that been the criteria back when we began our careers, we never would have made it. They would have replaced us really early on. So yeah, I think it is very unfair, but I also know it's what everyone signs up for and they understand it.
Lamar had a concussion this weekend. Patrick Mahomes had a concussion. You've had your history of concussions. Do you know you have a concussion in the moment?
Something's not right. I know that for mine, I always say this, I had 2 really serious concussions. I think all head injuries are serious, so I don't want that to be misinterpreted. But the others that I had, whether it was 5 or 6 or whatever it was, I think were pretty minor. But yeah, that something's not quite right. It's not a guessing game, I think, for the one who has one.
But did you try to go back in?
Yeah, I think, the trainers now more than ever, they're really good about it. And then they've got a third party that's able to evaluate the player and decide whether or not he's capable of coming back and playing. I think the league's made great strides in that regard. There was a time, I mean, even I had a concussion in the championship game to where I still have no recollection of having played in that game. Total amnesia from that game, and yet I played the very next week in the Super Bowl. There was no bye week, so I never missed a game the following week following a concussion, and I think that's where things have really improved, that these players have to go through a protocol, and it's stringent, but I think that's good.
Did you go back and watch the tape of the game that you don't remember?
Yeah, I did. We got to Atlanta the week of the Super Bowl, and I put on the game. Pretty surreal experience when you're watching yourself play. You don't remember any of these throws. I actually played good too. The best part.
You and Joe Buck should announce that game so you can actually critique yourself in the moment there. Wow, that's. Troy's going to be on the call with Joe Buck, the Bucks and the Packers at 3 Eastern at Lambeau Field. Playing in the snow, how big a deal? Those conditions, how big a deal is that? You have Tom, whose blood is probably thinned out in Tampa.
Right.
We make a big deal about it. Playing in the cold weather, is that big a deal?
I think it's a pretty big deal. I think because of the game being the NFC Championship game, I think the players, they won't even really be thinking of that much. They're going to be so excited about the fact that they're one game away from realizing a real goal and a dream for all those guys. But yeah, it's real. And I know that the Packers don't like the cold any more than anyone else. They're just more accustomed to it. They'd much rather prefer to play in the 70-degree weather, but I know that there's a confidence that comes with it. They wear it kind of as a badge in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers certainly does. But I think the fact that Tom has played in the Northeast as long as he has and played in those conditions, he's aware of it. He'll be able to communicate that to some of those players who aren't accustomed to it. And I think Tom will play well as a result of it. I think he's actually very much looking forward to the conditions.
How do you explain Aaron Rodgers? If somebody never saw him play, Troy, and you were trying to sum it up in 30 seconds, how would you do that?
I think he's got a coolness to him, I just don't see him get flustered. It just seems like he's always holding the winning hand, and he knows it, to where there's a confidence about him, regardless of whatever's happening in the game, that he's going to pull it out. And I know that's how I feel when I go in to broadcast one of his games, that he's done so much. He's the MVP of the league, in my opinion. I said that probably with a month left in the season when there was a lot of other people being discussed. And the reason being that he just doesn't have the same supporting cast. And it's nothing against those players, but when you compare, what they've had there in Green Bay relative to some other teams, a lot of their success, understandably, is the quarterback. But I think more so than maybe some of the other teams where they've gone on and had success and have great players at the quarterback position.
What does Buffalo have to do, assuming Patrick Mahomes is healthy? What would be your game plan in Kansas City?
Well, Dan, we had that game in the regular season, a Thursday night matchup there in Buffalo, and Buffalo was determined not to give up the big play, which is priority number one when you're playing Kansas City, of course. But to my surprise, Andy Reid just continued to run the football. And that's not really Andy's style either. He's always been criticized about getting away from the run. They ran the ball. I think they ran it for over 200 yards that night. I would have to go back and look. But so I think that the game plan works. I think if a team just runs the ball, that it's hard to score a lot of points as long as they're not getting big runs. That I think they did a good job in that regard. They got to shore some things up with the run game and then just play smart. I think when you get into January football, as we saw yesterday in our game, the takeaways and the turnovers are huge. I mean, really huge. They're huge every week. But the difference in these teams is so small that you just have to be really, really smart with the football and not beat yourself and give yourself a chance going into the fourth quarter. And I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be a great Super Bowl matchup regardless of whoever wins this next weekend.
Of the 4 teams that lost over the weekend, which team's in the best shape coming back next year?
Oh, man, off the top of my head, I always like New Orleans, and the reason I do is because of Sean Payton. I just think that he's going to have answers. He always does. So I like that group. I like Sean McVay and the Rams. I think they've done a good job now. I don't know that I'd say they're in the best shape. I think now there's some uncertainty as far as what's going to happen at quarterback. And then also, I don't know if it's been announced yet. Sounds like they're going to lose their defensive coordinator, and he was in a lot of ways the MVP of that team. So
yeah, he took the Chargers job.
Yeah. So good hire for the Chargers. He's been an impressive guy, Brandon Staley, and he'll be sorely missed there in Los Angeles for the Rams.
If you were the Texans GM, how would you clean up this mess?
Well, I think you got to first get on board with the quarterback. And I'm the last guy who would say that the players run the organization, and I don't think Deshaun Watson does, but he's a great player, and you'd hate to lose a guy of his caliber. I think that has to be mended somehow. I don't know what the communication was. I don't know what he was promised or however that happened, but I think that would be priority number one, is making sure he understands that he's going to be given every opportunity to go out and have success. I think that's what every player wants. That's certainly what every franchise quarterback wants. And they have to be able to prove that to him and satisfy him in that regard, because he's too valuable to just let walk and not have a replacement.
Would you take offers?
Yeah, I would always take offers. I don't know that anyone would ever be able to offer enough. But, yeah, I would certainly listen.
If you ran the Jets, would you offer everything?
No, I wouldn't offer everything. But,
well, not a Herschel Walker type trade here, but a Herschel light. How about, maybe 3 first-rounders and a couple of second-rounders for Deshaun Watson?
Well, Dan, I worked the draft when Mayfield and Darnold and those guys came out, Josh Allen. So I have a pretty good feel for those quarterbacks before they even got into the league. And I think Darnold is a really talented guy. I'm not willing to give up on Sam Darnold. Now, I would have to study him and really dig into it and see. But I think the Jets have had a number of issues. And to pin that on Darnold or say, hey, the reason we've not been very good is because we don't have a quarterback, I'm not willing to say that. I would have to take a much harder look. And maybe their franchise quarterback is in the building right now.
Have you ever had a player confront you after something you've said or said maybe a previous game, previous week, previous year when you go to a game, location-wise?
Not in a long time. Not in a long time. I've had players at different times who have come into a production meeting and had issue with something that I've said, which I'm open to having a conversation about. I feel like I'm fair, Dan. I think every broadcaster feels like they're fair, right? But that you don't go in with an agenda. But I'm willing to have a conversation. If I'm critical of a player, I feel very strongly in what I'm saying. So I'm more than willing to have a conversation as to why I said what I said. And then if I need to be corrected, if I thought maybe they were responsible for something in which they weren't, because we don't especially when you're talking about secondary players, you don't always know. Sometimes it looks like it was this particular guy, and I know coverages as well as anyone, but and I'll admit, I mean, I'll certainly come out and make amends to it. So
it was never go time. You never thought like somebody wanted to get physical with you.
No, I've never. I don't think I've ever said anything that would have offended anybody that much.
Well, it's early in the week, Troy, so who knows? You know.
I don't know. How about you, Dan? Has anybody ever come out?
Yes, A-Rod, and Lawrence Taylor.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have something in common with Lawrence Taylor.
That's impressive. Those are Hall of Famers coming after you.
Lawrence scared me. I could see the whites of his eyes through his dark sunglasses, and I thought he was coming after me.
Hey, Lawrence Taylor scared me, and I was fully padded with a helmet and shoulder pads.
Have fun. Safe travels up there. Tell Joe Buck we said hello. Always great to catch up with you, Troy.